time to fuel your business success. Welcome to Harmonious at Lunch. We're bringing you bite-sized advice and expert conversations to drive clarity and growth 5 days a week. Make sure you join our Facebook group at humanopt.com/lunch, where listeners like you and our guests hang out so we can find harmony in business together. If you're building a business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Welcome back into some more bite-sized business advice. In today's episode, we're talking business, we're talking real estate, but more interestingly, I think we're going to hear from an entrepreneur who's got multiple businesses and deciding how do you know when to grow a business and when not to grow a business. Very fascinating to me. I don't think we've covered that topic on the show so far. So Jeff Peterson, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brandon. I was really looking forward to your podcast today.
Well, you and the one listener are also looking for, I'm just kidding. We love our listeners and our subscribers, but this is a cool episode and a cool topic. We're going to get there, but I want to hear about your background because you have a number of businesses. You're in real estate development, you're in real estate rentals, and you have a lot going on. So tell me, how did you get this journey started? Because it didn't all happen overnight.
No, it didn't happen overnight. It only took 82 years, but so it seemed like 82 years, right? But it's funny. So I did just write a book, and the reason for writing this book, which is Are We There Yet, was so that I could kind of tell of my journey. So it's kind of like a memoir. Even my children will say, well, how did you get started? What did you do? Where did you start this? And how I got started was actually opened up an upholstery shop, a reupholstery shop in the front bedroom of a 2-bedroom house that I was renting at the time to do reupholstery. And I did that on my 21st birthday. So it's been a minute. And that's how I started. When we talk about scaling business, reupholstery is not exactly one that's easy to scale. So I quickly realized, of course, that was not what I wanted to do the rest of my life. I mean, as I like to say, you can make a very good living in reupholstery. I mean, but it'll buy you a bass boat. It won't buy you a yacht. So you can write that down. That's the way it's going to be. So I would go with my friends, later on in life, I'd go with my friends, we'd go to Wrightsville and would hang out and walk the docks. And I would talk to different boat owners there, big yachts, nice yachts. And I never found anybody in the reupholstery business. As a matter of fact, everyone I found was in the real estate business. They were doing real estate. Either they started or they ended up in it, either developing, building. But at some point, even if they were in, any kind of industry, they wound up putting their money into real estate. And I think you can find that throughout any success story. I mean, eventually that's where the money's going to go, is into real estate.
Yeah, I've heard the stat that 90% of millionaires either started in or have their money, some form of their money, in real estate. So it's a large portion of the people who are buying yachts. I've never heard of that measuring stick, so to speak, as far as income. So the bass boat versus a yacht. You learn something new every day, but you obviously didn't start with just dumping money into or acquiring properties. I mean, that's a process that takes a number of years. So what was that like? Because you also have 7 businesses. So how did the businesses coincide with the real estate?
Yeah, it kind of coincided. So I started buying real estate very early. And what I would buy was I would buy anything that I could get financed. If I could borrow the money and I thought that I could cash flow it, I would buy it. And I would count on my upholstery business to be able to fund any kind of difference that I had. So I was very aggressive because I didn't have anything to lose. So, when you don't have anything to lose, you can be very aggressive, right? So I moved up to Cary at the time, and that's Cary, North Carolina, and started buying some of these properties like that where you could get FHA loans, no qualifying assumptions back then. And that's where I started, but I quickly realized that, that'll make you $100 a month, or you may lose a little money, and you'll increase your, value over time, but it's going to take a very, very long time. So that's when I started looking at some commercial property, because I wanted to also grow the upholstery, because I had started doing fabric, and that's how I grew the business part of it, was into the fabric business, tied into the upholstery. So that's how I started on the real estate journey.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So was that like single family when you started?
Yeah, single family to begin with. And my first, I want to say the first commercial was in downtown Cary. bought a warehouse there for my fabric and upholstery business. Right. So I was renting, but I needed a lot of space. But since, I couldn't afford Class A office, I couldn't afford a really nice retail space. There was an old dilapidated warehouse downtown Cary, which I managed to purchase. And that in itself is a huge story of how I wound up getting that. But I still own it to this day, and that's where my offices are.
I was going to ask you because that area. So I'm from Raleigh.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, who are listening, and Cary is, right next door. This area is exploding. I've only been here for 2 years, 2.5 years, but over the past decade, it's just blown up. So how much of your success is just right place, right time, and really good strategy? And then how much of it is like in the last decade or so, have you kind of seen the writing on the wall and just invested heavily?
Yeah, I'd like to take credit for that. So look that far in advance. I've actually had my businesses there on Chatham Street for well over 30 years. And I've been waiting for downtown to explode for 30 years. And now it's exploding. But by the time it's honestly, if I had to wait for that, I would still be broke, because it just took forever. So I went into some other areas as well while I kept that. But now you look at downtown Cary, which is exploding, and I'm sitting there with what I have, and I'm like, I can just scrape this and build something really huge, which is kind of in the works a little bit. But that isn't the true growth of what we were doing. That was the basis, though, because when we bought the warehouse, we also expanded and we took several. It was large enough to put 6 other businesses there, which we rented out. So we were able to do basically pay for the property with other people's rent. Yeah, I guess that's the way of saying it.
That's great. So then you have your business, you have single family. Fast forward to today, you have 7 businesses building huge buildings. What are the other businesses you have, and also then let's get into how do you manage your time and make sure that they are running without you there?
Yeah, well, they run very well without me there for the most part. Actually, sometimes they run better without me. So
yeah, most businesses do.
It's true. It's actually true. So all of my children, in one way or form, are involved in the business, and now in several of them, they're partners. So in downtown Cary, we've segued into a consignment store. So we've got 14,000 feet of a consignment store, which is Peterson's Consignment Design. My daughter runs that. One of my sons also is there. So they run that business. I have nothing to do with it other than I have an office upstairs, thankfully, because that is a full-time, 100% career job. But to your point earlier, that's not really scalable. It's a great business to be in it, and it feeds families, but it's, you're not going to grow that business like you would think on some of the other businesses. We also have, of course, we do buildings. So we have Peterson Builders, which we do a lot of that down here at the beach. And I'm trying to think of what else we do, well, we have a restaurant down here at the beach as well. Again, I would never want to scale a restaurant. Just, I know a lot of people that are very good in the restaurant business. That is not we kind of fell into that. That's not our thing. It's been a lot of fun, but that has a shelf life, right? So, yeah. And then we have a salon down in Jacksonville, which we are expanding. That is scalable. That's very scalable. So we're doing our second one in Holly Springs. We're going to do a third one down here at the beach, and then we'll probably do one in Cary as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. So let's get into this then, because this to me is really interesting. So consignment and restaurant, you have no desire to scale. Not that they can't be scaled by somebody, but for you, what are you looking at? What goes into making that decision, and how are you comfortable making that decision to not scale those?
I think there's so many ways to make income. And right now I've made the income. I don't really need to, work that as a passion. And I think the best restaurant people, especially down here at the beach, the best ones are owner occupied, owner run. They live and breathe it, and they do fantastic. We do a decent job. We're not bad at it, but it's not our passion. And so when you take that, when you take a restaurant, for example, what are you ultimately going to be able to do? Can you do 2 million a year? Can you do, what can you do with that? But that's it. There's a ceiling on that because there's only so many people, the restaurant, the actual footprint is only so big and there's only so many people on the island. So you're not going to be able to scale that unless you opened up other locations. And if it's not your passion, I think there's better use of your time. So you need to pick a business that you think that can grow, but can also grow without you. And that's the key, is being able to grow without you.
Yeah, that's a great point. And kudos to you for admitting that too, because a lot of people can't wrap their heads around, well, if I'm in business and it's not my passion, I can't say that out loud, right?
Yeah.
I think it's
No,
okay.
I'll tell you, of all my businesses, the property is the passion. Property has always been the passion. The upholstery, I'm a very good upholsterer. I mean, that's how I started as an upholsterer. I haven't touched a piece of furniture in 20 years. But I'm very good at it and I love doing it, but you can't really make money at it. And the hardest decision I ever made in my career was to walk past the upholstery room and go straight to the office without working. So I'd have 6 upholsterers in there working, and I knew that I was, I could do it and I was good. And I felt like I was letting them down if I wasn't doing that. But that is not the way, for me, it wasn't the way you made your money. You made your money when you're in your office and where you're growing your business in other ways. But if you worked your hands too much, then you're in the weeds. So you have to get out of that a little bit. And I think for me, that was very hard. It was very hard to do.
I think it's a huge psychological shift for everybody who actually grows a business is you start with a passion or at least a reason for you, whether it was passion or it was a form of income. It's either one's fine. But then to get to that next level, you have to get out of the way, which is just the natural evolution of a business. Is it the same conversation with, you said your daughter runs the consignment shop? Is it the same,
Yes.
Passion?
She has a strong passion for it, very strong passion. And she does, she lives, eats and breathes it. She does the website. She does the social media. She actually helps me with my social media, but she is extremely good at it. And she loves obviously she loves doing it. Now, does she want to grow it any further? Probably not. I mean, I think that it's going to be a one-off location. When we're developing Peterson Station, which is the big mixed-use development we're doing in Holly Springs, at one point we were thinking about opening a second location of the consignment store there. And I kind of looked at it and said, this is so hands-on and it's so labor intensive. Do we really want to open another one? I mean, so there's 2 different ways to grow a business, right? Or 2 different reasons to grow a business. One is to say, hey, I think we can really do well. 2 businesses would be easier because you can share your resources. There's a lot of different things that are good. Or are you just doing it because of your ego? So you can say, hey, I now have 2 locations, or I got 4 locations, or I've got, 5 doors or 10 doors in property. So you can do it as a strong business decision, or you can do it for ego, and you have to know the difference. You have to figure that out real quick. Why are you doing this? So for me, it's not just if you can do it, but should you do it? And in my real estate career was kind of like that. A lot of times I'd figure out how to do a deal, and I'd spend more time figuring it out than figuring out whether I should do the deal. So I'd get the deal, but then later on I'd go like, for the amount of time, effort, money, was this really worth it? Did I really make the right decision, or should I just used it as an exercise and walk away from it? Now I kind of know a little bit more to be able to walk away from a deal.
Yeah, that's such a powerful question too, because I mean, I've consulted with business owners who, they have multiple locations, and it's like, okay, you have 4 locations. How many of those are profitable? 1.
Right.
Why do you have 4?
Yes.
It's truly, is it an ego stroke, or are you trying to build something? And I'm not going to overgeneralize here, but I'll say a lot of them are purely ego. It's like, do the first one really well and then duplicate it if you can, if it's the right move, like you're saying. So then why the salons? I'm curious. I feel like that would go in the bucket of consignment shop and restaurant, but that's one that you're pursuing growing into multiple
Yes.
locations?
So
What's the decision
I'm
behind
glad
that?
you asked that question. So the name of it is actually Evolution Salon. You said Evolution before, but it's actually, that's the name of it. It's Evolution Salon. So I'll tell you, that's kind of a twist and a turn to get it there. And it's a real estate play, not a salon play. So let me back up a little bit. Say every business that we do, we control the property. If I don't control the property, I just don't do it. So I don't go rent a building from somebody. I haven't done that in 35 years, but it's just something in my head where I just can't pay rent. I know that sometimes it's the better decision, and we may look at that on something else, but we just control the property. So when we first started Evolution, I liked the business model, and I was thinking about how to fill up my space at Peterson Station and to pre-lease it so that we could line up the financing on that big commercial project. Well, that hit a snag, slowed down. There's COVID, all of that hit. Well, I have a shopping center in Eastern North Carolina where I had 8,000 feet that I was not able to rent. So I was not able to get a tenant. I said, you know what? Maybe the first salon, I should try it here. I already own the space. I can't rent it out. And I love this business concept. So basically what we did is we chopped up the space and we put 40 different suites in that space. So basically it's 40 different businesses, small business owners are in there. And
8,000 square feet?
Yep. 8,000 square feet. So they're each one of them have their own room. So 9 of them are double rooms and 31 of them are single rooms. But basically you have your own room, you have your own customers, you have your own website, you have everything's yours. And that concept's not original. There's quite a few of them in Raleigh and Cary. There's nothing down here in Eastern North Carolina like that. There hasn't been up until now anyway. But you rent them all out like that. And basically you've got a lot of small businesses that lease from you, and your rental rates are just so much better than you would if you just rented that as 8,000 square foot. I mean, like 4 times. So it works out really well, but the entry level to get into it is very expensive. So I was fortunate that by this time I owned the property and I could afford to do all the upfit, because the upfit, was like $800,000 to fit it up. But once you get it, you're done. And it's very easy, very scalable once you get past that hurdle. So that's why. And we're doing one in Holly Springs right now at Peterson Station, which is the mixed use development we're doing. So that's going to be even bigger. That's going to have 47 units in there, and we'll rent them all out.
Same concept though. It's a big space. You're cutting it up into super small spaces. That's
exactly.
Awesome.
And so here's the conundrum, right? So when you cut up those spaces and you're putting in that much plumbing, you're putting in, I mean, the upfit on is much more expensive than if you just rented one space. You are banking on that you are going to be able to lease these spaces out to, it's not just hairstylists. It's, it could be nails, it could be anything body related, massage, it could be barbershops, permanent tattoo, all of those people rent from you. But you're banking that you can fill that up. So because if you don't, it's going to be extremely expensive for you to, go backwards and fix that space for something else. So you have to know that you're going to be able to do it.
Well, I'm curious, what's on a project like that? You don't have to give me the exact numbers, but a ballpark is really interesting. So if you had it at 8,000 square feet, your profit margin is such that it's probably got to be full the majority of the time. How many of these units need to be full for you to still be profitable on the space overall?
Okay, out of 40 units, well, since I own the building, I don't need any rented. But no, truthfully though, so I charge myself rent. I as most property owners, if they lease the space back to themselves, they do lease it back to themselves. So I do that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So when I do that, I really only have to have like 10 of them leased.
10 out of 40. So yeah, 25%. That's awesome.
That's all I have to have. That's your break even point. And as far as time commitment, I spend maybe an hour to an hour and a half a week on that. That's it. That's it.
Great.
And basically that's just running accounts receivable and making sure that everything's where it should be. So it's, no employees. So it's very, very easy to do once you get going. Yeah. But the entry level, like I said, is very steep. So that's when I said scalable.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense though. And it's a very interesting business model. I haven't heard that. It's really cool to think about though. But this episode has been super cool. I love just hearing your story and how you're doing all these different creative things in real estate. We got to wrap this up though, but if the listener wants to learn more, or who knows, maybe visit one of your properties, I know your book's on your website. Where can they go to learn more about you?
Well, they can go to the website, of course, or, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. They can just type in my name and I'm sure you'll be able to find me. But the website, and also, well, you've got Peterson Properties, but that's actually, I think it's right. It might be an S. No, that's right. Okay. I was looking at what you popped up there. Also, turtleshellrentals.com. So if you're in Raleigh, you probably have a lot of Raleigh-based listeners, local listeners as well. So we're down in Surf City with our short-term rentals. And that's a great place to go because you look us up on the website there and we've got some phenomenal properties, got a great team working too. So that works out really well. But also then, of course, if you want to pick up a copy of my book, the audio is going to be available next week or two, but it's called Are We There Yet? And it's a guide to conquering every twist and turn on the journey to success. And it involves a lot of how to and what you should do and how to start business. It's more, I would think, entry level for new entrepreneurs, new business owners. I think you'd find it very helpful.
That's really cool. So the website's on the screen. It's down below in the show notes below. As far as the turtle shell rentals, I will say this. I don't know exactly where all of our listeners are from. I know we have global and we're everywhere, all across the United States.
Yeah.
I will say this though. Yes, I live in Raleigh, but if you want to go to a beach vacation, you don't go to Florida. You definitely don't go to the Northeast. That's where I'm from. I'm from Jersey. Don't go to that beach. You go to North Carolina beaches. They changed my life. First time I went down here was in Outer Banks. And I was like, this is a whole different kind of beach. It's very close for me. Yeah. Hawaii is still the best. I went there. You're just not competing with that. Yeah. North Carolina is a very close second for me. So if you're looking for a beach vacation, go check it out. The links will be in the show notes below.
Well, you've got 2.5 hours door to door from where you are, which that's what made me decide on the Topsail area, for myself,
for me,
because it's just
it's
easy to get
it's
to.
Great.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, those of you watching, listening, go check that stuff out. Yeah. But it's good to have you here. Thanks to Jeff for stopping by. We'll see you on the next episode of Harmonious at Lunch. Thanks again for listening.
Another episode of Harmonious at Lunch in the books. I hope this episode made you think and you grabbed some actionable ideas to propel your business. Don't forget to like, comment your takeaways, and subscribe wherever you're listening so we can help more entrepreneurs just like you achieve harmony in their life and business. For cutting-edge tools that bring clarity to your people and processes, check out humanoff.com to download our app today. See you next time.